So I'm going to be teaching about binary opposition to a group of business students. It's going to be in the context of intercultural communication and conflict resolution. And I think binary thinking is often one of those can be hindrance to communication, particularly across cultures. And so since these are not sociology students who will never have heard of Levi Strauss or any of the people who came after him who looked at binary opposition, hierarchical opposition, and that sort of thing, I brought the simplest tools because we all learn it. I got a few children's books and I went through and I labeled how there's binary opposition. I got two versions of Cinderella, for example. And on the first page, you see all the different binary, oppositions. She's a poor girl and in a rich family, and this is the quandary. All the lines the different lines they cross. She's pretty and blonde. Her stepsisters are ugly and not blonde. She's nice. I mean, it literally on the first page, the birds come to her. She's so altruistic, and they come and they sing to her. Birds singing to these stepsisters. They're mean. She's nice. And it's on and on and on and on and on. And what's so difficult and scary about this is, one of the issues and why feminism has benefited so much from deconstructionism, and deconstructionism has benefited so much from feminism, is because the most obvious binary here is gender. Like literally, the very first legal document that we all have is a birth certificate, and it specifies in most parts of the world and to this day, man or woman. Now, again, even if you say, so what, and we are different, and there's a second part of this that I think we can't ignore, and it's hierarchical opposition. So it's not just that we can say that there are two things that are different, but these things are really, really competing between the good people, the bad people, the rich people, the ugly people, the nice people, the not nice people, and of course, the men and the women. From the very first line, and I also have Sleeping Beauty here, girls' looks is the most important thing. I mean, look at it. She's Cinderella, and the first thing she does when she wakes up is to, do her blonde hair and smile about it. And over, I was shaking, I almost threw up, because over and over, it's how beautiful she is. Then, of course, the whole objective is that she gets a pretty dress. She can get a rich prince. I mean, it's laughable because in this day and age, I don't think that you have to be a self-identified feminist to see that actually this could undermine us teaching kids equality. This could really and truly undermine the idea that men and women both have valuable things to bring to the table, because clearly they don't. Poor people, not deserving of any respect. Poverty itself is shameful, because the objective, of course, is to escape it, and she's dirty, but this emphasis on beauty. Now, BBC did a show called No More Boys and Girls at School a few years ago, and they do several experiments about how we teach children gender, and one of them has to do with clothing. So, of course, they took a group of toddlers and they switched their gendered clothing and put them with a group of carers to see how they deal with this. And lo and behold, even though we often say, oh, she likes the dolls and he likes the guns, actually every single one of the carers who believe themselves to be open-minded directed the kids towards, this is an appropriate toy for you, this is a less appropriate toy for you. He does a similar experiment with t-shirts. So I thought I would go onto a few websites of children's clothes and see if it was change, see how things were. I'm American, so the first thing I did was go back to what I would have been shopping for as a kid, Gap. I was shaking. I'm looking at Gap Kids now. Of course, the first thing they do is they have, for kids, gendered categories. There's not just a toddler category, and I'll get to who does. But when you look at the boys and girls clothes, girls are supposed to be pretty and boys are supposed to be tough. I mean, Gap even has a shirt for boys. It says hero on it, and I don't see anything like that for girls. There are lots of monsters. And if you look at TK Maxx, it's the same thing. If you look at River Island, it's the same thing. River Island's an exception because they do have a statement about their toddler neutral clothes. It says unisex baby clothes. But everyone else, even for toddlers, they put gender. And when you look at it, what's even more scary is that for gaps, you know, when you open the tab in the internet browser and it tells you a little bit about the website, even just toddler girls, toddler boys, for the tab, for them, it says cute clothes for girls. That's literally what it says in the metadata. Cute little girls clothes at Gap Kids. And then of course for the boys, it just says um, toddlers, toddler boy, toddler clothes. So even we've introduced this to even the internet because that was not there before. But this idea that girls should be cute, pretty, and that they learn this from a very early age, and that boys should be tough. Now, if you're doubting this, you probably haven't seen all the research about by age 7, girls have much more ability to speak about their feelings. By age 7, that boys and girls can only speak equally on equal terms about one feeling, one emotional feeling, anger. Other than that, boys just don't have the emotional skills. Now they've argued that, well, if you give a group of girls a bunch of dolls and they sit and play together and they make up dialogue for these different dolls and they actually are developing language skills, emotional intelligence skills, they have to say, okay, my doll's going to do this, and I have to consider how that behavior impacts that other person's behavior. So actually practicing empathy. We do just the opposite for boys. And then we grow up and say, just can't talk. Just can't talk about my feelings. Boys, men should be stoic. Men should be strong, a hero. We've got to figure this out because this is a really serious problem and we're really causing our society's harm. We're not giving people freedom, peace. And yeah, feminism really does just mean equality. As one of my students said today, I don't think if you want men to be dominant or women to be dominant, that's not feminism. Feminism is not to dominate. And so my students even today spoke about this and acknowledged that, okay, there is a marketed, commercialized feminism, and then there's feminism. Just like there's a marketed consumers hip hop music, which is so far from where hip hop came from. Just look at 2 Stars, LL Cool J, and 50 Cent, an actual pimp and drug dealer now versus one who was getting one out of the ghetto when hip hop was in its early days. That's how different our understanding of what gender equality means. And another student pointed out that we have to be very careful with these words because once you point these out to parents, they can't unknow that they influence their children as such. But as one of my students pointed out, a good majority of them could become defensive. I did something wrong, push back, and that gets us nowhere.